Welcome back, everybody. It's Zach here, bringing you guys another fantasy football video. And this one, I will be going over every single game that happened in week 2, giving you guys sort of a quick summary, give you guys my general thoughts in terms of what we can learn from week 2 and how we can take that forward with us going into week 3 and the rest of the season. Really fun week of football here. A lot of stuff happened, a lot of surprising things. I know it sort of felt like maybe like 10 players had really monster games this week, and then everyone else kind of sucked. So there's a really huge disparity for people in terms of how their fantasy teams perform versus their opponents, at least myself personally. A lot of really big swings in games, a lot of really just widespread scores. I think that's because we've had generally a lack of offense so far this season. It's been a lot less up tempo, less passing touchdowns, less passing yardage, but there's still been those couple guys that have really gone off, and it's really making it hard for teams that don't have that those one or two guys each week to really put up a lot of points here. So I think there's a lot we can learn here. It's going to be a lot of fun going forward to the rest of the season, and hopefully you guys find this useful. So yeah, any comments you got, let me know in the comments below. I'll be happy to just interact with you there. It's a lot of fun, and yeah, with that, let's just get into the first game here. Got a lot to cover. We'll start things off here with Thursday Night Football. We've got the game between the Bills and the Dolphins. The big storyline here is going to be Tua. Obviously, you hated to see it, but he did go down on a running play here, took a hit to the head. We saw him leave the game with a concussion, and we know that with Tua's history, there's going to be a several-week timeline here where he's likely not playing football for the Dolphins. Reportedly, he has no plans to retire or anything, so if you're a Tyreek or a Waddle owner, that is good to hear. I think as long as Tua's out, I think you're still going to be playing Tyreek Hill. You're still going to be playing Devon Achane. Those two guys are super explosive. They can really make a lot happen with the ball in their hands after the catch. That being said, I would probably sit Jalen Waddle until I see it. Skylar Thompson is just not an NFL caliber quarterback. They did sign Tyler Huntley off of the Ravens practice squad here, so Huntley, I could easily see him getting the start here even as soon as this week. He's a mobile guy. He does give this offense a little bit of an added element they don't really normally have, but I'm not playing anyone but Tyreek or Achane until I see something else here. We saw really how the Bills are going to want to play football. They want to run the ball. They want to play defense. That's their head coach's DNA. That's how they want to establish themselves. And I think James Cook really could be a league winner here. We saw him with 3 touchdowns last week. He had 2 rushing touchdowns all of last season. I talked about him a lot this offseason as someone that I thought was going to be a really focal point of this Bills offense. And then if the touchdowns somehow came, we knew he could potentially be a top 5 back this season. And seeing that sort of come to fruition is certainly exciting. So I think James Cook's the guy that I'm going to be really stoked to have on my rosters going forward. Josh Allen, he's going to be fine. They're not going to be able to get up 30 in games like this that often. They're a really good team, but they're not going to blow out teams that much. Josh Allen will be more involved. James Cook is not always going to have 2 rushing touchdowns here. We know Josh Allen's going to get a lot of those, so don't worry about Josh Allen there. As far as the pass catchers go for the Bills, I don't really know who the number 1 wide receiver here is going to be. I do think it's Khalil Shakir, but I don't really think he has a ton of upside here. Coleman is still the guy that I think has the most upside, so do with that what you will. Not really sure what to make of that there. And then Dalton Kincaid, he's a starting tight end in fantasy. I don't think the world where he's ended up being the tight end 1 in fantasy is really an opportunity here. They're just spreading the ball around too much. There's not enough passing volume here. Maybe that changes over the course of the season, but they weren't really the highest passing volume team last season after making the offensive coordinator switch. So in general, I think Kincaid's going to be good, not great the rest of the way. Next, we've got the Vikings at the 49ers in a surprising game where we saw the Vikings actually beat the 49ers. Jordan Mason, he's going to be locked and loaded as an RB1 until Christian McCaffrey returns. We got notice this weekend that Christian McCaffrey was placed on injured reserve, so he's going to miss at least through week 5. Sounds like they're saying he'll maybe miss a couple more weeks than that, so I would expect him to be out probably 6 or more weeks the rest of the way here. There's an argument to be made that maybe Jordan Mason's a better fantasy asset than Christian McCaffrey the rest of the way, but if you've got Mason, be really stoked there. You've got an RB1 until Christian McCaffrey comes back. We also got notification this morning that Deebo Samuel's going to miss several weeks with an injury. George Kittle's going to eat here. There's going to be a huge consolidation of targets. I do think Brandon Ayuk will get more involved as well. He has to. Juwan Jennings is a decent dart throw on waivers. We'll talk about him in the waiver video as well. But Ayuk hasn't looked great. Juwan Jennings has been involved, and they're going to have to throw the ball to somebody, especially if Ayuk isn't really NFL ready just yet, obviously having missed most of training camp. So we'll see what happens there. But until I see this offense performing at a higher level, I'm not going to be streaming Brock Purdy. Really happy for Sam Darnold. It was great to see him play well. Sort of a fun story here. Justin Jefferson did get banged up, but at least he put up a monster performance before that. Had a 97-yard touchdown. That was a really fun play to watch. Should be okay. I don't think he'll miss any time here, but just keep an eye on it. But I think he'll be okay. Jalen Nailor looked good. I think you can stream him in good matchups for the Vikings until Jordan Addison comes back. They need other pass catchers behind Justin Jefferson. If Addison's out, I think Naylor will be a decent streaming option. It's like a really low-end flex play, so just keep an eye on him. He probably shouldn't be on waivers in deeper leagues. And then Aaron Jones, he remains a solid RB2. We saw Ty Chandler put up a decent performance this week as well. He should probably be on rosters, but he's not really anything more than a handcuff there. Next, we got the Seahawks at the Patriots. This game might be the game we look back on as the breakout for JSN, so it was really fun to see him here. He had 16 targets in this game. We saw DK Metcalf and JSN combined for 30 targets compared to Tyler Lockett's 2. I think that's going to be what the offense is here. JSN, DK Metcalf, they're the two best receivers in this team right now. They should be hyper-utilized. This is nothing against Tyler Lockett. He's a great player. He's still going to be involved in the offense as like a go-to possession kind of guy on third downs, but DK and JSN are going to be with the motor that moves this offense here. It was really great to see them attack the middle of the field. They threw the ball 44 times. Geno Smith looked really good. I think we could see DK and JSN really be great the rest of the way. Zach Charbonnet just doesn't look good. Obviously, it was good for fantasy because he scored a touchdown, caught 5 passes, but he's just nothing more than a volume-dependent RB2 here. But that being said, this offense in Seattle looks really good. I'm excited to see what they can do, and when Kenneth Walker returns, I do think he's going to be a top 10 running back. So if you can maybe buy low on Kenneth Walker, just keep that in mind. I would target him a little bit. Geno Smith also might be a weekly streaming option here. This Patriots defense looked really good against Joe Burrow, and they couldn't slow Geno Smith down, so just keep him in mind as someone that you can play in plus matchups going forward. For the Patriots, Ramondre Stevenson, he is the offense there. They're going to run the ball a ton. Ramondre looks really good. They're throwing the ball to him out of the backfield as well. Antonio Gibson also looked really good as well. Had a really fun, like 45-yard run here. I think he's going to be like a low-end flex play in like deep leagues if you need him. But he's also going to be a pretty good handcuff if we were to see something happen to Ramondre. As far as the pass catchers go in New England, I think Hunter Henry is really the only one to make note of here. He was the clear leading receiver here. Really good out of the out of the tight end spot here. Had over 100 receiving yards. We do know the Seahawks, or at least last year and now so far this year, look like a team that you can sort of target at the tight end position. So could have just been a matchup thing. Hunter Henry could easily be the number 1 target in this offense. So I think he does need to be rostered, and you can probably just play him going forward until we see otherwise. Next, we've got the Giants at the Commanders here. I think Malik Neighbors could potentially lead the NFL in target share here. He had 18 targets. It was like a 64% target share for Malik Neighbors. That is absolutely insane. That's obviously not sustainable. We could see him near like that 35% target share mark, which would still easily lead the NFL here. So he's going to be a stud. Obviously, he did have that one brutal drop that kind of cost him the game, but he's still a great player, put up a monster performance. I think better days are ahead for Malik Neighbors, even if Daniel Jones doesn't perform at a high level. And it was sort of the recipe here. It's just Malik Neighbors getting all the targets and being good enough with the ball in his hands after the catch that it doesn't really matter if Daniel Jones sucks. Devin Singletary, the clear RB1 here in New York, in good matchups. I think you can definitely play Singletary as a solid RB2. He looked good in this one. He will catch a few passes. They're using him at the goal line if they need him there. He's really the only backfield they trust there, so I think Devin Singletary is going to be a solid low-end RB2 going forward. For the Commanders, Jaden Daniels looks like he's just going to be a really solid QB1. He's going to run the ball a ton. You can probably just keep playing him almost regardless of matchup. Brian Robinson looked really good as well. Again, this is the Giants defense, so let's not get super excited there, but he is the RB you want to own in Washington. And I don't really know what to do with McLaurin here. Only 3 catches for 22 yards in this game. Not really excited about that. I'm probably benching every single Commanders pass catcher aside from maybe Zach Ertz if you're super desperate in like a 14-team league. But I really just need to see Terry McLaurin put up a couple good games before I trust him at this point. Next, we got the Chargers at the Panthers. Dobbins looks legit here, had 17 carries. Gus Edwards actually had 18 carries and does have more carries than J.K. Dobbins over the course of the season. Dobbins, though, he's got the juice. He's the guy that can really house a run here. So I think as long as he's healthy, J.K. Dobbins is going to be solid. I do still think that Gus Edwards is probably the short yardage back. I don't see them ever shifting towards this being a full workhorse role for either one of these guys. They know that both these guys have injury histories. They don't want to overload either one of them. So we'll see what happens there, but I think you can sort of low-end play Gus Edwards as like a desperation, touchdown-dependent running back 2. And then J.K. Dobbins, he's just going to be a solid running back 2 as long as he can stay healthy here. For the Chargers, other than that, Quentin Johnston scored twice. I don't really know what to make of the Chargers pass catchers. Johnston did have a really nice play on one of his touchdown catches. I don't really buy into it. I think Ladd McConkey's still probably the wide receiver you want to own in Los Angeles. This just tonight, actually, in my home league, I traded Shakir and Quentin Johnston for Amari Cooper. Obviously, sort of buying low a little bit on Amari Cooper there. So if that gives you a little bit of context, I think that's something you can help with. For the Panthers just suck. They made the announcement today they're going to switch over to Andy Dalton from Bryce Young. Hopefully that improves the offense here. I think Deontay Johnson's got a much better shot at being relevant. He's been getting a lot of targets. I still think he's a good player. It's just Bryce Young might be the worst quarterback in the NFL right now, at least it was playing. So we'll see what happens with Dalton. I'm not really eager to trust any Panther until I see it, so I probably want to sit every Panther in week 3, see what happens in week 3, and then move forward from there. But if you had to play Deontay Johnson, I would get it if you want to give him another chance in week 3. Next, we've got the Saints at the Cowboys. The Saints absolutely demolished the Cowboys in this game, making me think maybe the Saints are just good. It's just 2 weeks here, but 2 really great performances. Obviously, against the Panthers, it was easy to overlook here, but when you go into Dallas and dominate the Cowboys like that, it is something you need to at least notice. Rashid Shaheed caught another monster touchdown. They're utilizing him in more ways than just that, though. Has a couple end arounds. They're giving him manufactured touches. I think Rashid Shaheed might end up being a top 25 receiver this season. I don't think he's going to be as good as he's been so far, but he's going to be a nice weekly boomer bust flex that I think I would just consider starting every week. Really similar to I would prefer him to Xavier Worthy rest of the season if that's like a comp if you guys want to make just those high upside flex plays. Alvin Kamara, he's going to be a monster, going to catch a ton of passes. They're using him at the goal line. If this Saints offense is good, Kamara could easily be a top 5 running back. I talked about him in my league winner video just going into the season as a guy that I think people were sleeping on. He's got all the volume. We know he can score touchdowns as well. He's going to be a monster going forward. Chris Olave should be fine. I don't know that he can really be a top 10 wide receiver if Shaheed keeps playing this well, but this offense looks great. Olave was a half yard away from a touchdown this week, and we'd all be really right back onto the Olave train. So don't give up on Olave. I know it's frustrating watching Rashid Shaheed catch bomb touchdowns while Olave doesn't, but those will come for Olave at some point here. He's like a high-end wide receiver 2 for me the rest of the season, but not a guy that I really think could be a top 10 guy. For the Cowboys, they should be fine here. Obviously, a rough week for them on offense. Sort of 2 game scripts that are really flipped. They got blown out in week 2. They blew out the Browns in week 1, so we haven't really seen them in a normal game script here. A couple notes. It seemed like Dowdle was a little bit more involved this game than Zeke. I probably want to sit both of them until we get more clarity there, but I kind of think that Dowdle's going to get more of the touches, and then Zeke will get the goal line role, so they're probably just going to cannibalize each other and both not be very useful. And then note, Jake Ferguson should return next week. That's great news. You could probably just play him right away with how bad the tight end spot is. Next, we've got the Colts at the Packers. Anthony Richardson sure came back down to earth in this one. Only completed 50% of his passes, had 3 interceptions. Just didn't look very good. There were a lot of drops from the Packers wide receivers in this game as well. Not a lot to be super excited about there. I know Richardson at least sort of manufactured a little bit at the end of the game through a kind of garbage time touchdown to make his performance not look quite as bad. So I still think you're playing Anthony Richardson going forward, but just know that it's going to be a bit of a bumpy ride. You probably knew that drafting him, but it's just going to be it's a lot of variance in everything Anthony Richardson does, so there's a lot that can happen there. Jonathan Taylor, we saw him be right back to being a monster here, put up a really monster game, just didn't really get the volume we would have wanted because they got blown out in this one, at least not really blown out when you look at the final score, but they were down 2 scores earlier. They had to lean on the passing game a little bit. He only had 13 carries, I believe, so we should see him be more involved going forward. Did catch some passes, though. That's good to see, and I think we could maybe target the Packers' defense against the run as well. They obviously gave up 3 touchdowns to Saquon and then got kind of carved up a little bit by Jonathan Taylor in this one. I don't think you can trust any Colts wide receiver until we see something else here. Pittman, I know he's getting most of the targets, but it's just not working. They're not completing a high percentage of their targets. He's not getting utilized downfield. I think Pittman's a guy that should be like a flex play going forward at best there, so I don't love that. For the Packers, Josh Jacobs, he's a workhorse. We saw him had 23 or 25 carries in the first half, so that's obviously awesome if you're a Josh Jacobs owner. Didn't find the end zone, but I think he'll be just fine. You're playing him every single week, and then I probably just want to sit every Packers wide receiver until Jordan Love comes back. Malik Willis did enough to win, but he's not going to make these Packers wide receivers very good for fantasy. Next, we've got the Browns at the Jaguars. Amari Cooper, another brutal week here. Had 8 targets, only caught 3 of them. Obviously, he's got 17 targets so far in the season, only 5 catches. That's not what you want to see. I mentioned I did trade for him in one of my home leagues here, but I am just trading Quentin Johnston and Khalil Shakir, so I'm not giving up a lot for him, but I do think Amari Cooper will be better going forward. Deshaun Watson looked competent here. You can certainly not take a lot from that. I think he's going to be a guy that you're hoping can just be a fringe top 20 quarterback in the NFL, and that'll be good for the Browns, but he's not great. You can play him as like a low-end streaming option, but I don't love the offense really in Cleveland going forward. The Jerome Ford usage, that was concerning. We saw Deonta Foreman get a lot more involved. That's concerning. We know Nick Chubb will be back at some point. I think if you can sell on Jerome Ford as like a solid RB2, I would look to do that because I think that the clock is ticking on Jerome Ford there. I don't think he's a very talented player, and Nick Chubb will come back and get some touches, and when this becomes a really muddy backfield, I'm just not going to like that at all. For the Jaguars, Trevor Lawrence looked absolutely awful. They're now 0-2. I don't expect them to be a playoff team this season. Just don't think Trevor Lawrence looks like he's really evolving as a quarterback at all here. Travis Etienne and Brian Thomas are really the only Jaguar players I think you can trust in lineups. Etienne, Got a lot of work here. We saw Tank Bigsby leave the game with what looked to be a relatively significant injury. Still waiting for an update on that. But if Bigsby goes down, you're right back to ETN being the true workhorse he was last season. We know he can be a top 5 running back if things break right there. So ETN's going to be a monster. Brian Thomas looks really good, getting targeted downfield. Obviously, not a ton of volume there, but you're playing Brian Thomas as like a solid flex play. I view him like Rashid Shaheed sort of similarly, just guys that you're hoping for that big play on. But Brian Thomas is a good player. I think he's the Jaguars receiver I'd want to play with how bad Christian Kirk has looked. And then Evan Ingram, you're probably playing him as well when he returns. Obviously, he left this game or didn't play in this game. He got hurt his hamstring in pregame warmups. Obviously, huge bummer there. Hopefully, you guys were able to get him out of your lineups before the game started. But with how bad the tight end spot is, you're going to play him when he's back regardless. Next game is going to be the Jets at the Titans. The Jets looked okay. I didn't love their offense here. They did score 3 touchdowns. Brees Hall, he's going to be a monster. Had a really awesome catch in this one, so really great to see him utilized as a pass catcher. Garrett Wilson going to have a hard time living up to his pre-draft value here. I was worried about this because it's just we know what the Jets want to do. They want to run the ball. They want to play defense. You're not going to see the Jets in these shootouts. You're not going to see Rodgers throw the ball 40 times very often. Garrett Wilson's not going to have nearly the volume he had last season, so you're going to need him to improve his efficiency, score a lot more touchdowns, and that maybe could happen in this offense, but I just don't really see it here. 2 straight weeks of Garrett Wilson just being sort of mediocre. I think he's probably like a mid-tier wide receiver 2, like right around that wide receiver 15 to 20 range. If you can sell high on him, it's still at like wide receiver 1 value. I would look to do that because I just don't think he's that kind of guy in fantasy at this point in the season. For the Titans, Tony Pollard is still the clear RB1 here. We also saw Tyjae Spears get banged up. It sounds like Spears will be okay, but just another reason for Tony Pollard to be good going forward. Alvin Ridley scored twice, scored on an end around, and caught a 40-yard touchdown here. Doing that against the Jets, that's really promising. I think Ridley's going to be a guy that can be a fringe top 24 wide receiver the rest of the way. And I think that's the only Titan I really want to start outside of Pollard here. It's going to be Pollard and Ridley, and then just sort of check out for the Titans the rest of the way here. Will Levis looks bad. Hopkins looks bad. Spears isn't involved enough. Chigg's not involved enough. It's going to be Pollard and Ridley and nobody else going forward. Next game is going to be the Bucks at the Lions here. Chris Godwin is looking like an absolute monster here after playing just over 30% of the snaps in the slot last season. We saw him play 76% of his snaps in the slot this last week. Only wide receiver so far this season to put up 20-plus fantasy points in each of the first 2 games. So Chris Godwin is looking like a value right now. Their schedule continues to look good going forward, at least for the next 2 weeks. I think the Bucks are going to be a really good offense going forward. They just look really good. So I think Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, they're both going to be fine here. Evans obviously with a bit of a dud this week against Detroit, didn't score a touchdown. It was just really all Chris Godwin. They didn't need a whole lot else, and they won the game doing that. So Mike Evans will be fine. Just keep starting him, and nothing to worry about there. Rachaad White did get banged up in this one. Obviously, huge disappointment for those of us that started him. I'm a little bit concerned here just because Bucky Irving does look good. Not a whole lot of information out there on Rachaad White's injury to this point, but if Rachaad White were to miss time, Bucky Irving would be a really great option. I could see him carving out a little bit bigger of a role in this offense as well, so there's a little bit to be concerned about there, but Rachaad White's still going to be, I think, a solid RB2. Baker Mayfield, he should be a solid streaming option as well. He looks really good. There's a ton of weapons in this offense. I think you could do a lot worse than Baker as a streaming option going forward. For the Lions, Gibbs and Monty, just keep starting them. You're hoping they score a touchdown. Obviously, they sort of eat into each other, but this offense is good enough for them both to be really good. Jameson Williams looked legit again, him following up week 1 with another solid performance in week 2. Makes me think he's going to be a legit, like solid, probably like a low-end wide receiver 2 the rest of the season. Obviously, a lot of variance there, but I think he'll be a fringe top 20 receiver this year. I think Amon-Ra and Laporta are going to have a hard time returning value if Jameson Williams is this involved, just because, you've got 2 running backs that are getting the ball a ton. You've got Amon-Ra, Laporta, and Jameson Williams. Those are 5 players you need this offense to support. This offense is really good. They can certainly support it, but I think you're going to have at least one guy left out every single week, and it could be a little bit frustrating. And with Amon-Ra and Laporta, you were certainly drafting them to be the top of their position, really, and I think it might be a little bit tough for those guys to hit that if Jameson Williams is this involved. Amon-Ra did get banged up in this one. It sounds like he should be okay here. We'll keep an eye out on his status for week 3, but I think he should be okay. But just monitor that going forward. I think this offense would be, we'd obviously be super stoked about Jameson Williams and Laporta if we saw Amon-Ra miss a game. Next, we got the Raiders at the Ravens, and talk about a surprising game here. We saw the Raiders go into Baltimore and beat the Ravens, knocking the Ravens down to 0-2. So the Ravens should be a little bit concerned there. For the Raiders, Brock Bowers might just be the tight end 1 this season. I'm not going to crown him just yet, but 9 catches for 98 yards, his second game ever. Brock Bowers looks legit. He can do a ton with the ball in his hands after the catch. It seems like a lot of the tight ends that were drafted really early, Travis Kelce, Sam Laporta, Mark Andrews, Dalton Kincaid, Trey McBride's really the only one that's hitting right now, and I think there's an opening here for the tight end one spot to be open there for Bowers. Kittle's obviously looked great as well, and with Debo out, that's an option. But Bowers is going to be legit. You're starting him every single week going forward. I think if maybe you can somehow still buy low on him, I think it's worth doing because he's going to be super involved in this offense. I do view him as he's a solid top 5 tight end the rest of the season here. Davante Adams looked good, but it really was all in like the fourth quarter. I would look to sell high here. Was having just an absolutely awful game, and somehow the Raiders caught lightning in a bottle. Adams is still a really good player, but I don't think the Raiders are going to be able to put up 26 points very often. They're not a very good offense. I'd look to sell high on Davante Adams. Don't play any Raiders running back. Alexander Mattison had a touchdown again, and he did nothing else. Zamir White looks bad. I'm not playing Raider running backs at all until I see something else there. For the Ravens, Zay Flowers had a great game here. He's the clear wide receiver 1 in Baltimore. Derrick Henry, he's going to keep scoring touchdowns. Obviously, that's going to be how he puts up fantasy points. He's not going to catch passes. You want to play him in favorable game scripts. Thought this one would have been one. Luckily, he bailed you out with a touchdown here, but you're going to need touchdowns for Derrick Henry to be an RB1. Lamar, he'll be fine. Bit of a down week here, but I'm not worried about Lamar obviously at all. And then it was nice to see Mark Andrews be a little bit more involved. Had a goose, I think, going into the second half here, so it was concerning, but then he caught 5 for 41 over the course of the game. Should be okay. Out-targeted, but Isaiah Likely ran more routes, played more snaps. He's the tight end 1 in Baltimore. He's going to be fine. You're going to need touchdowns for big games out of him, but I still think my Andrews can be a fringe top 5 tight end for us going forward. Next game, this one was super fun. We had the Rams at the Cardinals, and what a crazy game here. We saw the Rams get absolutely obliterated. Cooper Kupp likely to miss several weeks. He left the game with an injury here. That is a huge downgrade for this Rams offense going forward. There's really no offensive line or no receiving core in Los Angeles right now, so it's basically Stafford, Kyren, and then a bunch of medium-tier wide receivers. You've got Tutu Atwell, Demarcus Robinson, Tyler Johnson, Jordan Whittington. Those are guys that are fine, but they're not guys that you want to be like the number 1 options in your offense. So it'll be interesting to see what this offense does. They play the Niners next week. That's obviously really tough. The Rams season is certainly in danger here. So we'll see what happens. I think the Rams will be able to figure it out just enough to maybe stay alive until these guys comes back. But a lot of concerns there. Kyren was not good until he sort of bailed us out with a touchdown. Should be okay. I still think he's going to have all the work here, but there is obviously the opportunity here for things to really just fall apart for the Rams this season. So a little bit of concern there, but I wouldn't be too worried. I think the Rams will be okay. Just, if you want to hedge your bets a little bit, if you can still get like top 5 RB value, maybe top 10 RB value for Kyren, I wouldn't mind switching over to an option that like isn't on a potentially sinking ship right now. For the Cardinals, Marvin Harrison Jr., that was awesome. 4 catches for 130 yards and 2 touchdowns in just the first quarter. First player as a rookie ever to catch 4 passes, 2 touchdowns, and have over 100 yards in the first quarter of a game since Marvin Harrison, his dad. So that's really a fun stat there. Kyler looked incredible, had a perfect passer rating. His only 4 incompletions were to Marvin Harrison Jr., which Marvin Harrison sort of talked about after the game, which is really great to see him just being, unsatisfied with their performance. Could have easily had 4 touchdowns too. They threw 2 goal line fades to him. I think those are going to work over the course of the season, so I think Harrison's going to be a rock star. Let's not worry at all about week 1 here. If Kyler plays like this, the Cardinals could be the best offense in the NFL. He looked absolutely fantastic. Trey McBride's going to be awesome. Looks to be a lock to potentially be a top 3 tight end in fantasy going forward. Kind of got lucky with a touchdown, fell on a fumble, but he was still super involved. This offense is going to be really good. Then James Conner, he's awesome too. Keep playing him until he gets hurt. He's going to be a solid top 10 running back, I think. Next up, we've got the Bengals at the Chiefs. Huge news out of this game here is going to be the Isaiah Pacheco injury. Just really brutal to see. He's going to miss 6 to 8 weeks here. I think that going forward, I don't really know who's going to fill in there. You're going to have Carson Steele, Samaje Perine, CEH should return. They're reportedly meeting with Kareem Hunt as well. We'll see what happens there, but I think in general, it's just going to be a lot of guys sort of filling in, and none of them are going to end up being super useful. So I don't know what to do with that really a whole lot. I think the Chiefs are just going to throw the ball a lot more. Rashee Rice, he's great. We saw him connect on a deep field pass, which is really rare for Rashee Rice, so that's good to see. I'm really worried about Kelce. He doesn't look very good to me. Only had 1 catch for 5 yards in this game. I said after the first game of the season that I was more worried about him than Mark Andrews. I just don't think they need him. They've got decent pass catchers all around because of Rashee Rice, because of Xavier Worthy looking good. I think there's, they might need him a little bit more with Isaiah Pacheco going down, but he just doesn't look like himself. I think he's a year older. He's not playing as many snaps. I don't think Kelsey's going to be a top 3 tight end this season. Mahomes, also a little bit concerning. It's been a long time since we've seen Mahomes be an elite fantasy quarterback. I talked about him as a potential bust for me this season just because I didn't think they were going to need him to win games. They've got a really good defense, really good running game. The injury to Pacheco does open up upside because they'll have to throw the ball a little bit more, so we'll see what happens there. But I am worried in general about this Chiefs offense outside of Rashee Rice, to be honest. Joe Burrow looked all right. I think he's a solid, like low-end QB1 going forward. Ja'Marr Chase was still bad. You're still playing him every single week, but they've got to figure things out in Cincinnati quick. They're 0-2 now. Mike Gesicki put up a great game here. Only takeaway there is that I think we should maybe consider targeting tight ends against the Chiefs, especially the guys that are being utilized underneath. We saw Gesicki put up a huge game. We saw Isaiah Likely with a massive game in Week 1. Just keep an eye on that, and if you're streaming the tight end position, the Chiefs might be a decent team to target. And then Zach Moss, still the RB to own in Kansas City there. Got the goal line touches, didn't score in this one, but he's still a guy that I think you can look to play if you need to. Next, we've got the Steelers at the Broncos, and guess what? Another ugly win for the Steelers. They've now got 1 offensive touchdown on the season and 2 wins, so that's really funny to see. The defense is legit. It might be the best defense in the NFL. Obviously, not a crazy set of matchups here to start the year, getting to play Kirk Cousins in Week 1 and then the Broncos in Week 2, so we'll see how this defense fares against better offenses going forward, but the Steelers are going to be a really good defense. Najee Harris dominated touches here, but he's just going to need touchdowns to provide weekly upside here. He's obviously not going to catch a ton of passes because the Steelers start throwing the ball a ton. Not going to be super efficient because he's facing stacked boxes there. So you're just hoping for 4 yards carry, a couple short yardage touchdowns. That's how he's going to have good games. Didn't happen this week, but I think Najee is going to be a decent low-end RB2 going forward. Pickens will be better. Obviously, a disappointing performance. 2 catches for 29 yards. Did have a 51-yard catch called back due to a penalty and a 6-yard touchdown pass called back due to a penalty. Also drew like a 40-yard pass interference. Pickens was a lot better than his box score here. I wouldn't be super worried about him. You're playing him going forward. For the Broncos, I don't really know what to do there. Javonte was involved, had 6 catches in this one, but just really bad. He does lead the NFL in rush percentage against stacked boxes by a wide margin. It's like 58% of his carries are going up against 8 men or more in the box. Second in the NFL is Jordan Mason at like 41%. So really, it's just that defenses are not afraid of Bo Nix at all. It's making things hard for this defense or this offense in general. I think Javonte is going to be the only running back I'd look to play maybe, but he's like a really, really low-end RB2 option. I'm not excited about that at all. You're going to need good matchups for the Broncos to even consider that. And I'm going to sit every pass catcher in Denver. Bo Nix looks awful. Josh Reynolds was kind of the wide receiver 1 in this game, but a lot of his points just came on a trick play that worked out. Bo Nix threw a pick right after it. I just don't like this offense at all. I don't really want any part of the Broncos offense until we see some improvement. Next up, the second to last game here, we've got the Sunday Night Football game between the Bears and the Texans. The Bears just look bad. I do think it will improve over the course of the season. This is an offense that's really gelling. You've got a new offensive coordinator, rookie quarterback coming in, a lot of new pieces here. They should figure things out and improve over the course of the season, but I don't think we're going to see a year where it's necessarily going to be fantastic here for this Bears offense. I think until things improve, DJ Moore is probably the only Bear I'm considering starting here. Rome Odunze didn't look great. Keenan Allen's been banged up. DeAndre Swift doesn't look good. This offensive line is horrible. DJ Moore is the only Bear I'm going to consider starting until we see something improve there. For the Texans are going to be great. CJ Stroud looked awesome. They didn't have to put up a lot of points in this game because the Bears' offense was pretty much inept. So I wouldn't really worry about the Texans here. The better days are coming for the Texans' offense. Sitting for Tank Dell here. He's going to bounce back. Don't panic on Dell. Kind of dropped what should have been like a 50 or 60-yard touchdown in this game. If he catches that, we're talking completely differently about Tank Dell. Dell's going to be just fine. I think he's a really solid buy low candidate right now. Other thing to note here, Joe Mixon did get rolled up on with a bit of a hip drop tackle there. We'll see how his ankle holds up. He came back and played in this one, but it's pretty common to see those things swell up after the game, then see these guys miss time. If he does miss time, Cam Akers would be the pickup. It might be kind of fun to see some Cam Akers now that he's hopefully back and healthy in the NFL. He looked really good in the preseason, so I think he could be a decent spot start if you needed to next week. And the last game of week 2 here is going to be the Falcons at the Eagles. The Eagles just found a way to blow this game here. It seemed like they had full control the whole time. Sort of chose to throw the ball a little bit questionably on third down. Could have ran a lot more clock. Resulted in a drop. The Falcons then had like a minute forward to go back down and scored in about a minute here. Bijan could be the RB1. I think he's obviously extremely talented. He just looks like potentially the most talented running back in the NFL to me. They utilize him as a pass catcher. He hasn't scored yet. and I think that there's a lot more left in the bone there, but he's still a really good player. There's a lot to be excited about going forward for Bijan. He's certainly someone that I think I would still be looking to target. Obviously, it would be super hard to trade for him, but I don't think there's really very many players in fantasy that I would rather have than Bijan going forward. Kyle Pitts, he was uninvolved. I don't really love Kyle Pitts. I've never been a huge fan of him. Well, at least, I mean, not since his rookie year. Obviously, Kyle Pitts was an amazing prospect, but it's just been a tough ride here for Kyle Pitts managers. I think you're still probably playing him, but it's just rough. You're hoping the Falcons offense gets rolling here, maybe uses this game as some momentum. Kirk Cousins did look a little bit better, particularly on that last drive of the game. Hopefully that sort of just kickstarts things here for the Falcons. I'm still a little bit worried about Drake London here. Ended up with 6 catches for 54 yards and a touchdown, but pretty much all of his production came on that last drive of the game. Had 2 catches and a touchdown really to end that drive. So we'll see what happens there. I still think London's fine, but I view him more as like a wide receiver 2 going forward. I think the possibility of him being like a top 5 wide receiver, I just don't see that happening this season unless Kirk Cousins dramatically improves going through the season. Jalen Hurts, he's great. Saquon's great. Nothing really to learn from the Eagles here. A.J. Brown will be missing several weeks, it sounds like, with his hamstring injury. So I think Devonta Smith, he's going to be a rock star going forward. Saquon's super important to the offense. Dallas Goedert gets a bump. That's about it, though, for the Eagles. Not a lot else to take from that. So that'll do it for the Week 2 recap. Up next, I'll be going over the waiver wire in Week 3, going over which guys I think you should add to your roster. So that video will also come out today. Highly recommend you guys watch both of those. I might try and put out the Week 2 recaps just maybe like on Mondays, so you guys have a little bit more time to digest those, and then I can go over just like the Monday Night Football game in the waiver video. Let me know what you guys think there if you guys have an opinion, but otherwise I'll just keep putting out both these videos every single Tuesday morning or Monday night whenever I finish recording them. But yeah, obviously going forward the rest of the season here, there's going to be 4 to 5 videos every single week. There will be a live stream on Sunday mornings where I'll answer your start-sit questions, go over last-minute injury updates. A lot more content here. I'll be here all season long to help you guys win your leagues. And if you want to make sure you don't miss any of that, just make sure you subscribe to the channel. That way you get notifications. If you click the little bell, you get notifications when a new video comes out. That way you can make sure you watch all of them and get all of this juicy content to help you guys win your leagues. And then, of course, if you did make it this far in the video, if you're already subscribed to the channel, just give me a thumbs up as well. It really helps with the algorithm and all that. So yeah, appreciate you guys. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're through 2 weeks. Don't panic. There's a lot more football going. If you're 2-0, if you're 0-2, a lot of things are going to change here. So don't get too high or too low. We got a lot to do before we can win some championships here. So yeah, appreciate you guys. I'll catch you with the next one. Peace. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.